And welcome back. Last video we talked about some of the little features that were in the game, and I talked about some things I'd like to work on in the future. But today I thought I would do some actual development work and take you guys along with me. So currently with the battle system, anytime you defeat an enemy, it will drop a chest that has some type of loot in it, depending on what kind of items that the creature will drop. The problem is currently the game does not despawn the chest, so if you loot all the items, every time you reopen it, the items will be back. So yeah, you can basically duplicate items, which is not the best thing to have in a game like this, or really any game. So I can kind of show you the issue there. So let's go ahead and pull up the inventory. I will equip a skill really quick, and then go ahead and start a battle. So I put in a new creature in the game. Start battle. And some of the new animations don't line up exactly the way that I want them. But basically I added a health bar and kind of like a little status bar that shows like their health and how many action points or mana points they have left. But as you can see, they don't line up exactly correct, but that's something that we'll work on in the future. But let's go ahead and show kind of what's going on. So I'll go ahead and knock out this little Minotaur guy. And you'll see it will drop a chest, so that's great, right? So I can open the chest. I've got some items here. I can add these items to my inventory. I can check the inventory. Yep, items were added. The problem is I can keep reopening it, so technically I can keep adding these items over and over again until I completely run out of inventory space. So the problem is, on the server side, we are not flagging the chest as being looted, so every time I'm clicking on the chest, it's basically re-rolling the items and allowing me to pick them up. So that's something that's not too difficult to implement, I don't think. So let's go ahead and kill the debugger here. So I've got Visual Studio open here. Let's make that a little bit smaller. So the first thing we're going to need to do is basically go into the loot manager. So each kind of UI element has its own manager class. So if we take a look at this guy, he has a slot clicked function. And so anytime you're clicking on one of those inventory slots or one of the item slots within the loot container, it fires off this slot clicked function. And in here, it checks to see, first of all, was the index actually within the range? Because if you were to click a slot that was outside of the range, obviously we don't want to blow it up. But basically in here, we have a check to see if at the end of the code execution here, are there any slots that have any items left? And if there are, then we mark the container as looted. But really what we need to do is raise a container looted event so that the map manager knows to despawn the object from the map. So that's what we're going to do. So let's see. So basically right here, if slots do not have any items, we're going to raise a new event. So I don't think I've created this particular event before. So let's see, raise event.invoke. And we have to give it a sender. So the sender is going to be this manager, and we have to give it a message. So the message is going to be a new container. We'll call it container looted. Oops, container looted. And since this doesn't exist yet, well, we can go ahead and pass in the parameters. So we pass in the hub. So the hub is actually the Signal R hub. So for anybody that's familiar with Signal R, basically I keep a reference of the hub each time the client calls to the server. That way I can execute functions on it from within my actual game code, and I don't have to just rely on the context of the hub. So I will pass the container looted, and then let's see, so what do I actually want to give it? Does the container have an ID? I think it does. So if I look at the loot container, it should have a container.id. Yeah, so I think maybe give it the ID. Okay, so now I'll generate this class so I don't have to do that manually, but it's going to put it in the wrong folder. So let's see. Yeah, that's the wrong folder, but that's fine. We just move it. So let's grab this guy. We're going to move it to the messaging folder. So I've got this folder for loot events. So we'll put it in here. So we'll put it as a private. That's not going to work. I think it's got to be a public property because the interface is what's telling me to do that. And private string ID, that's fine. Actually, no. So I think I need that to be public as well because the map manager is going to need to access that. And I don't need that semicolon. All right, so we will just fill out this event and make sure that we are setting our properties correctly in the constructor. So that should satisfy the constructor. And then with any message, it needs a send function. So we will do that. So what this is going to do, actually the send function is not going to be handled by this particular event. And I will show you why. So if we go to the map manager now, let's go down to where the events are handled. So currently the map manager is not set up to handle any sort of loot events. So that's fine. We can do that too. So let's go ahead and go to our manager class. And right now, since I have not added any loot events before, the interface doesn't contain it. So let's go ahead and add that handle loot event. And I will go ahead and implement all of those and then bring you guys back once that's done. All right, so go ahead and implemented that interface. So now I've got to actually register that new event to the proper event handler. And to do that, I've got this messaging service class. And this is not a great way of doing this, but it's going to have to work for the time being because I just haven't had the time to kind of implement something better. So basically, messaging service.register loot events is going to be a new function. Events, and you give it the manager that you want to be the subscriber or the subscribee, I guess, and then we want to give the map. So the maps is the map manager. So we go generate this particular method. Luckily Visual Studio will do this for us, although it's not going to be right, but I can just copy from the other methods that are in there. So we'll take this will work for example. Whoops. All right, so grab those parameters. And so what, and I can't spell events. And so what this does basically is it takes in a manager that's going to be the subscribee, and you pass it a list of subscribers. And then you basically do for each subscriber, that particular manager's raise event will call the appropriate event on the subscriber. So in this case, handle loot event. So let's go ahead and close out all of these. All we really want is the map manager. And so we will open this guy, scroll down to the bottom. Now we have this handle loot event. And so all of these other event handlers are not implemented because they're not being used at the moment. But as I add more features, they will definitely be used. So I'll go ahead and let's see. So what do we want to do? So if message dot get type, oops, change this to message. So if message dot get type equals type of, and the type of the event we just created was the container looted. So if the message is a container looted message, then we can go ahead and cast that as a container looted event. Whoops. Keyboard is getting a little crazy. Container looted message. And now we're able to kind of access the properties that were on that original message. So in this case, when a container is looted, we want to despawn that container. And to do that, I already have a despawn method. So I'm pretty sure if we look up, we've got despawn game object. So that's what we want to do, despawn game object. So we give it the game object, which is going to be, okay, that's what I need to do. So I don't want the ID of the container, I want the actual container itself. So in this case, we're going to have it pass in the loot container. And loot container inherits from a interactable object, so any sort of interactable object would work here, but I'll just go ahead and specify it's a loot container just so it's more clear what exactly this is doing. So we'll call this loot container. Great, all right, so we'll just set it like so. Apparently I copied the whole constructor, so we just want that. So now, despawn game object. So what does he need? He needs the container. So I can do e.container. He needs the player. Does he actually need the player? So I think this method might be old because I already have the player. No, I don't. So because the map manager is not a user-specific manager, it's actually a global manager. So all of the users that are online require the or use the same map manager. And in that case, you have to give it the actual player that's doing the operation. So in this case, I will have to go back to the container looted and actually pass in one more parameter. In this case can be just the, I could probably do just the player ID, but just to make it easier, we'll go ahead and do the player itself. So we'll go ahead and pull this guy in, set his property up, and I think I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the part where we've got some of this plumbing completed because this is the most exciting stuff to watch. So I'll go ahead and do that really quick. All right, so we've got all the plumbing hooked up. So just to recap kind of what's going to happen, basically the user's going to click on that last item. It's going to come into the slot click method. It's going to get down to the bottom. It's going to say, do any of my slots have any items? If they don't, then we're going to raise a container looted event. And basically the map manager is listening to events from the loot manager. So when the loot manager raises a container looted event, it's going to come down to its event handler. It's going to say, hey, I just received a container looted event. I should probably do something with that. And so it's going to call despawn game object. Despawn game object is going to grab the player reference, call into the correct map, and actually despawn that game object. So if we look at the despawn game method, that's the interface. Let's go into the actual implementation. So despawn game object, all it does is look at the player objects, which are only the objects that the specific player sees, and not like global objects that any player connected would see. So it just takes in the game object that it's removing, and it removes it. So pretty self-explanatory. Let's see if it actually works. That's the important question. So got the game hooked back up here. Go ahead and equip the sword, and let's just kind of walk back over here and hang out by the fire for a bit. And we will start a battle. Let's do it with the wolf this time, why not? So let's go ahead and take the wolf out. And one more hit and he's dead. Cool, so we dropped the chest. Let's pick up the items. So there's 1 item, 2 items, 3 items. That's good news. We hit the debugger here. So you can see we hit our despawn game object method here in the map manager. And if I let it play, you can see our chest is gone. So I can't do anything with the chest now. It's no longer in the game, and all the items have been added to my inventory. So that's one little feature down, or I guess completing a feature where you get a loot drop, you pick up all the items, the container shouldn't linger around. I guess you could ask or beg the question if that's a bug or a feature, but I just never kind of got around to implementing it, so that's pretty neat. But yeah, so that's probably going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if you have any comments or remarks, feel free to drop them in the comment section. I'd love to just talk about game development in general. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.